Welcome to Good Times RVing. This morning, preparing for our trip this fall, I backed the RV out of storage, only to be greeted with bells and whistles and alarms of all sorts from the jacks. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but they were retracted and will not extend. So we'll have to figure out what's going on and get them repaired before our departure date. So here I've turned the key to accessory, everything lights up. The 4 lights for the jacks are jamming, but it beeps, doesn't respond. Not sure what's going on. Well, I continue on and press buttons for a while and try to figure out if I can get this to the pump to energize, but no luck. Just keep on pressing buttons, nothing happening. So I guess we have to resort to calling the manufacturer. Here we go. Very quick call. They seem to be very confident that it was a solenoid that was poor or bad. And it is here at the front of the engine, which is easy to get at, but exposed to all sorts of weather. So maybe that's why they only last 13 months. Would be really a bad problem should the jacks have been down when this failed. We'll just fix it. I'll get it done. Here we are at the front of the RV. Pull out my trusty hood release tool, Phillips head screwdriver. I haven't been able to figure out how to get this hood to release cleanly with the cable installed in the RV. You pull the cable and it unlocks, it just doesn't release. You need to find some way of springing that open when you pull the hood release. Here we are. Okay, so solenoid on the pump motor. They've got it strapped on there with a hose clamp. So it seems like an odd way for a manufacturer to assemble their product, but oh well. So we've got to figure out a way of getting at that hose clamp or hose. Here, let me check to see if we've got any voltage. If we've got, well, sure enough, we've got 12 volts going there, and that's live. So we've got to figure out a way, get that to be dead, if you will. I could go find the circuit breaker and pull that, but quite honestly, I would just as soon have all the power shut off. So I'll go here to the power locker. I've got 2 lithium-ion batteries, and then there's my solar charger and the inverter, Magnum hybrid inverter, MPPT solar. Here's a 300 amp battery and another 300 amp battery. All of this, by the way, is switched. You see the switches here, those big red blocks are switches to shut all this off. So I'm going to turn off the solar panels first, and then we'll hit that the switch on top of the battery, and then go to the other battery, shut the 2 batteries off. Then I'll go back and I'll hit that 120 amp circuit breaker, just to make sure that we don't have any odd power moving around in the coach. I'm trying to make sure I get rid of all the sources of power, and that way it doesn't really matter what I touch under the hood except for the chassis battery, which I will disconnect, and that way I can drop tools and do whatever I want in there. As long as I'm not crossing battery terminals, I'm okay. So here we are. Cut the breaker off as well. Shut the breaker off. And I am plugged into 50 amps power, so I'll go over there and pull that out. Get rid of that power source. Let's go back and test we'll test these solenoid to see if we still have any power going to it. It's just a quick test just to make sure that we've got a clear path here. We're not going to get shocked. No, look at that. We still have 12 volt power there. So that means it's getting power from the chassis battery. So we'll have to go ahead and disconnect the chassis battery. Do that pretty quickly. My preference is always to remove the negative lead. That way I don't get zapped. So I'll just take a look at that. And by the way, while I'm doing this, I've taken pictures with my phone of the wiring for the reverser solenoid, and I even took pictures of this to make sure I didn't leave anything out when I'm putting it back together. So here's just an odd ground, and then we'll just unhook that quickly. So now all the power in the coach should be off. And just to make sure, I'll go back and I was taking a look there to see if there wasn't another battery in the chassis, but it doesn't look like there is. So I'll check again just to make sure that there's no power from anywhere. Shouldn't be, but you never know. So check here, make sure I've got 0 voltage, which in fact I did check, and there is 0 voltage. It kind of peeked under my arm there. It was 0. So I'm confident now that I can take these wires off and not cause a problem for me or the equipment. So that's good. Here's the new reverser. And as I discovered when I took this apart, that in fact it was a completely different part. While the amperage was correct and the poles were correct, the unit itself was completely different. I did call Equalizer and find out did I get the wrong part, because you'll notice here in a second that the bracket is different and would not allow for, the new bracket would not allow for me to run that hose clamp through it. So I had to do some modifications to the bracket to make it fit on the new solenoid. But the manufacturer said that yes, in fact, that it is the correct solenoid. It is a new part number, and hopefully more reliable than the old part number, and it should work just fine. So here I am loosening up the terminals, and I really want some place to store all these loose bits. So I cut the bag open quickly and took the new solenoid out with its hardware, placed that aside, and then I'm going to use the bag for all the bits and pieces as I disassemble the wiring here, and nuts and washers and etc. I have star washers, regular washers, and nuts for all these connections. I've edited this because this process was truly excruciating. It took a very long time to get all this apart. It doesn't look like it's complicated, but it is. It's complicated to get all the pieces out and to make sure that you're paying attention to where everything's going. So, here I am unscrewing the nuts. And it seemed like they were on there many threads, but slowly but surely I'm working my way through getting all the pieces detached. I've moved this up to 3 times speed. This literally turned out to be a whole day event for various reasons, but I'm working away at it, collecting the hardware, and now that hose clamp is loose so that I can slide it around and get at the fastener more easily. It's a 5/16 socket wrench to unscrew that clamp. So here we go. We're finally getting there. We're finally getting the hose clamp separated, which I had to do to get the reverser solenoid off. Took me a while, but here we are. Finally removing it. And there's where it was quite obvious that the bracket holding the holding the solenoids. You'll see not only are they brackets are different shape, but the screws are in different places, which meant I needed to put different screw holes. And here is the magic of editing. I drilled that bracket out and put 2 new holes in it so that I could mount it to the new solenoid. Tighten it up here and make sure that's nice and snug, and then put that back and feed that hose clamp through the reverser solenoid and try to put this whole thing back together. And I've cut a lot out just because it took a very long time, way more than it should have. But I've got big fingers and there was very small spaces in there. So here I am yanking. You'll see that I use an impact to do some of the tightening, but I don't use it. I don't tighten it all the way with the impact. I much prefer to hand tighten these things just to get a feel for the torque, just so I know that they're snug and they're not over tight, should I ever need to get that apart. And here's the picture I took on my phone just to make sure that the wiring is correct, that I have all the pieces in the right places. And in fact, it looks correct. That the red staining is a paint that they put on these things to keep them from corroding. And here we are, and just tighten that negative terminal up. Just zap it up with the impact. Put the weather shield over the negative terminal. Oh, no magic smoke. They didn't escape. Thank goodness. No sparks, no magic smoke escaping. We're in good shape. So let's see, we'll power it up again and see if this thing works. It'll be very exciting to have jacks again. So we'll flip on the solar batteries and plug it back into the 50 amp power. Here we are, nice and snug. Okay, close that up. And here we are in the... Hey, we've got pumps. We've got pumps. So, looks like this might have been a success. Let's try... So, we've got pumps running. Let's see if anything, if the jacks extend, that will be a good thing. A success. We've got movement. We've got movement. Apparently the engineers at Equalizer know their stuff. We've got an active jack system. Yippee. Hopefully you found this useful, and thank you for watching.